Good afternoon. My apprentice and I are happening through your area of space today with some very important information.
We're on the Facebook, and we're on the DragonCon app. After this is over, just a suggestion, 5 stars? Just gonna throw that out there. It's just a suggestion, a mild suggestion. And I'm gonna bring him out right now, ladies and gentlemen, Adrian Paul.
Hello. Wow, I was expecting about 4 people in the room. You shocked me this morning. Are you all having a lovely time here? You're making a lot of noise. Well, this is my first DragonCon after, I don't know how many years I've been doing this. How many? Thank you. I'm glad somebody reminded me this morning. I like standing most of the time. I kind of walk around, so if you'd excuse me, it's a lot easier for me to do. You're shaking in the front there. You're doing this. There could be 1 or 2 reasons for that. Yeah, I mean, I've actually this year done a few cons. Obviously, this one is one of the largest, and there are quite a few of you here that I'm really surprised. I'm really thankful that you showed up this morning to listen to my rattle. You know, I think it's very important for me to connect to you guys and answer your questions, because I'm sure you've got a lot of them. And I will take questions from you to hear what you want to say, and then I'll come up with some stories that obviously I have in the back of my head somewhere. But it is really nice to be here, and actually some of you, how many from Atlanta here? Oh, 2, okay. I shot one of my first movies in Atlanta, which was with Sandra Bullock, Love Potion #9. And that was fun. I don't remember it being quite as humid though. Without me saying anything more, who has the first question? And do we have a mic, by the way? And don't worry, I know it's always early in the morning when nobody has a question at first, so everybody's shy. I personally wouldn't want to ask. Oh, hold on, there's a question there. Somebody had a hand up. Did you have a question? Could you give him the mic?
I was going to ask, what was your favorite Highlander movie that you did?
The one that I did. Because there are those that are nameless, you know. Endgame probably was the one I did, but you know, the first Highlander movie is the one I think is a classic, which they're trying to reboot at the moment. Ryan Reynolds was supposed to be attached to it. I heard that he has distanced himself, or his agent has distanced them from it right now because they're not quite sure, I think, when they're going to be producing it, but they're trying to revamp the original Highlander movie, and I don't know when or how they're going to do that. And then there was a lull. If you don't want me to start singing, please ask a question. No, you don't want me to start singing. Over there.
I have 2 questions. Did they let you keep your sword, and are you going to make a cameo if they do a reboot?
The cameo, again, I think it may be difficult because I played Duncan MacLeod, I forgot. It's been so long. I played Duncan MacLeod, and this is really about Connor's journey. And I think it's probably that. I have no idea what the script has, and they always like to keep things in the last minute. Usually they'll say, oh, by the way, would you like to do a cameo? You're starting Monday. You know, that's usually how it works. But I've not heard anything, so, you know. What was your first question? Oh, did they let me keep the sword? I have a couple of different swords, yeah. I mean, I actually have one which is a unique one-off, which is actually done in a gunmetal blade, hilt. And that is really nice. It was actually given to me and made in Vancouver when I was doing, I think, season 3 or 4. The crew put chip together and put this thing to, which was great. So it's only one in existence. Plus, I have one of the original ones that I actually used. You're all shy in Atlanta, aren't you? Is it because it's early morning?
I got one.
Oh, okay. Where are we? Okay.
How did you get involved with the character of playing Duncan?
Well, that's an interesting question. Because people said, how is it playing Connor MacLeod? I'm like, well, I didn't play Connor MacLeod, I played Duncan MacLeod. But I was supposed to play Connor MacLeod. And that really scared me when I first got the job, because I got the job, it took 3.5 months for me to get the job from the first time I met them. And I was actually the first person to walk in the room in the hotel to the Four Seasons on Doheny in Los Angeles. And I walked into the room and there was Bill Panzer, Marla Ginsberg, the casting director, and one other producer. And I'm sitting there, I was the first person they ever saw for the role. And I sat down and I'd seen the Highlander posters, Highlander 2 posters on the wall, and I said, this was about 2 months prior, and I said, I just knew I was going to do something with it. I don't know why, I just knew I was going to do something with it. So when I walked in the room, I sat down, I went, hey, you don't have to look any further, you got your guy. And they looked at me like, you cheeky, you know. And I actually said that to them, but it still took 3.5 months to go through a screen test and everything else to actually get the role. And they said, well, you're going to be playing Connor MacLeod. And I was like, oh, I really don't want to do that, because when you play a character, if you take over the role of somebody else, you're going to be compared to that character. It happens, that's what it is. And as luck would have it, I got the role. I think they said to me, I remember I got it on my answering machine and said, you got the part. And I was really happy because I really wanted to do it. And they said, you're leaving, Friday and you're shooting Monday. I was like, oh good, plenty of time, this is now Wednesday, so... and you're playing Connor MacLeod, but by the time I'd actually left, they then said, well, we actually have Christophe Lambert. We're going to postpone shooting for a week because we've got Christophe Lambert. He's actually going to be doing the role of Connor. And I went, thank God for that. Then we had to figure out what name I was going to be. We went through Ian, we went through Dougal, we went through... Dougal MacLeod. Didn't quite... Hey, I'm Dougal MacLeod from MacLeod MacLeod. Doesn't work. So it became Duncan MacLeod, and I'm really happy it did, because I was actually able to, when you do something like this, my character was kind of based on Connor, but he was his own man, and we developed him over the years into being who he eventually turned out to be. And that was a long-winded answer, but I get on a roll. Yes. Who has the mic? Someone turn it on. See, I told you so.
Just first of all, thank you so much for coming on behalf of everybody. But also, this might be hard to answer. I was wondering, what do you miss the most about the entire experience of Highlander?
The weekly paycheck. I'll be honest with you, it was one of the most intense work I've ever done, physically, mentally, and emotionally, because every week, every day of every week, I was working on some part of that show for 5-6 years. So it made me learn a huge amount of things about who I was, and actually I started my charity, the Peace Fund, because of Highlander. Because what Highlander gave me, it showed me, I was mobbed when I was in Paris, and I'd have kids outside my trailer, 20 kids, 30 kids. I was in the Vatican. I went in the Vatican, I was screaming girls in the Vatican, they nearly threw me out. I was just standing there, so what I realized was the things that celebrities can do, what the power they give and the inspiration they can give to people like that. I thought, well, why can't I give that to kids? So I created my charity because of that. So that was one thing it gave me, and so I'm really thankful for that. But it also gave me the ability to direct. It gave me the ability to work with some great people. So I had a huge learning curve over those 5 years.
I was wondering if you had any favorite locations for shooting, like on site.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is Paris was always fantastic because you point a camera in Paris, you've got 500 years of history immediately. So Paris was really fun. I mean, I had a great time in Bordeaux when I shot the 100th episode, as I directed it, because Bordeaux is beautiful. I don't know if any of you have ever been to a wine country, but when you go to wine country in September in Paris, you have miles and miles and miles and miles of vines that are changing colour from brown to yellow to green to orange, and it's the most amazing colour scheme. And you've got 2-week window, and then you've got castles next to it. So I had a great time. Bordeaux was a fantastic place for me to go to, but Paris really, I would say, would be the most interesting visually, because each week we're going to this chateau, or we're going to this barge, or you've got the Eiffel Tower. You know, I tell people I'm the only guy in history who probably has done a tango and a sword fight on the Eiffel Tower. I don't know who does that. So I think, you know, for me, there's certain places in Paris. I mean, I love shooting underneath Notre Dame because it's such a fantastic piece of history, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Hey, yeah. So you look great.
Usually girls tell me that, but
I was thinking you looked quite a bit buffer than you were when you were doing the show, and I just want to know what you've been doing.
Actually, I've been raising my 2 kids. You know, and seriously, this past year and a half, I've actually not trained hardly at all because I had a back injury, lower back, doing yoga. It's supposed to be gentle to you, you know? But so I have done a lot. But the thing I think is really important is what you eat and how you live your life. That really retains a lot of things. I drink a lot of water. That's all I drink all the time. They filled it up for me. But I think that's one of the things that cleans you out. Because it's an interesting thing, you know, you have one small thing that's bad for you, it's okay. But when you do that constantly over years and years and years, it has an accumulative effect. And I try to stay away from that. You know, my kids keep me young because I'm always running after them, especially my 1-year-old who's like a rocket. So I think those are the things I do. I try to stay up to date with the new training ideas and methodology. Yeah, that's it. I told you I couldn't speak. So those are the things I think I do.
Thank you very much for giving us all so much great action scenes and bringing our hearts so that we cry. Before you started your role as Duncan, did you have any experience sword fighting or speaking French?
Yes and yes. For a year before, I'd done martial arts for about a year and a half, 2 years prior to doing the show. And I'd actually picked up a katana. I started learning how to use a katana from that point. It was very basic, really basic. The man that really taught me a lot about sword work was Bob Anderson. And God bless you, Bob. He's an artist. And the interesting thing is when you see sword fights, a lot of time you see a lot of bang, 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 bang. What Bob Anderson was able to do, he would walk into this room and we'd have a sword fight in this room. Now you have to be creative to do that because what you have to do is you go, oh, I could get a chandelier, that we could go across this thing and then we could get this thing to fall down and it just misses. And he creates the sword fight based on what you've got around you. It's not just about the blades. And then the added thing was, what is the relationship between the 2 people? Is it one of fear? Is it one of anger? Is it one of jealousy? Is it one of hate? What is it? So all those things we had to try and instill, and he was the guy that taught me that. After I started working with Bob for the first year, I then had my Sifu, Werner Rieda, out of Hawaii. He's half Chinese, half Hawaiian. amazing martial art, I started studying Hung Gar Kung Fu, and I started learning the Chinese techniques, and I learned the Korean techniques, and I learned. So as you watch the show evolve, you'll watch my sword play evolve as well, because it's really different. And the one thing the sword masters we would have in, after Bob went on his way to do other things, we had F. Bomber Cash, we had Peter Diamond, we had different people come in, and they would say, that F. Bomber Cash would come in and go, some actors say you're changing things. I'm like, no, I'm not changing them. If somebody doesn't, if his cut was very rigid, his cut would be 1, 2, 3. Well, mine would be 1, 2, 3. All of a sudden, the movement looked like I changed the choreography, but I wasn't. My movement, which is my movement, is what I do, but it's the same thing. So you then had to adjust that, because he could choreograph with the guest stars, and I would come in and go, oh, and they go, oh, it's all different. But it wasn't. It was just the way I moved and the way I adapted it to do that. Because what Vernon said to me, I think this is where Bob came in. A martial artist is like a painter. He doesn't use just one colour. You use many colours. And you use that and you adapt it. And that's what Duncan MacLeod became. He became a guy that used all these different techniques. And if you look at the things we did, it was a variety of things that he actually applied during the history and everything that he eventually became. Looks like the Statue of Liberty.
I was just curious about in the final season, how did you feel when you first read about what happened with you and Richie?
There's the sigh. It's interesting, you know, the thing about great shows, and it applies to today, like one of my favourite shows right now is Game of Thrones. You never know what's going to happen. And that's what keeps you watching. You go, I can't believe it, and then you change, you go, oh, I've got to watch this again. The same thing happened with Highlander. You never knew that Tess was going to die that day. You never knew that Richie was going to die, although some people deny it to this day. And it was hard, you know, it's like you've worked with somebody for 5 years and now saying they're going to leave the show. I've got to tell you something that's funny actually, because I got split open a lot of the times in doing Highlander. And in that particular episode when Sam and I did the sword fight as him being Ahriman and that, he did something, he cracked me on the head with the sword, and I got ticked off at him. I think probably because, you know, all the emotional stuff going on, but he came up and said, come on, Stan, for God's sake, man, like, can you? Because I got hit so many times. But I'll always remember that, like, oh no. But, you know, him coming back when we did the last 2 episodes was great. I mean, I love Stan. He's an acting teacher now in Los Angeles, and he's very, very well known now. So, it was really hard, but it was also necessary to do, because I think it kept the show alive and interesting as something different. You never knew what was going to happen.
Did you have a favorite episode or story arc, and do you prefer directing or acting, since you had the chance to do both?
Story arc, the tough thing to do when you're doing a syndicated series is to actually have a story arc, or they used to tell you that, because a lot of the time they would air the episodes, they'd air number 1 and then number 6 and then number 15 and then back to 3 and then back to 10. So the story arc sometimes would be tough. But if there was one in particular, I mean, I always liked James Horton, his story arc. The Callus was a very good arc as well. It was a shorter arc to do. But you know, the arcs within the characters, Richie's arc in the seasons was also a really interesting involvement for him, because he was supposed to. The interesting thing is when they cast people, sometimes they don't really cast and they don't know quite who the person's going to be. So they cast. Richie originally was a tough street kid, but Stan came along. Stan's not a tough street kid. He's different. So we had to kind of change it. We melded him into kind of being who Stan was. And that happens a lot with series, that if you're there for a long time, they will kind of write a character and then evolve it into who the actor is that's writing. That was a the story arc. What was the second question? Directing versus acting. Yeah, I love directing. I'm hoping to direct my first feature next year, which I'm just finishing writing now, a rewrite on it. I love directing. I think it's an amazing opportunity to paint a picture, because a director is an artist as well, because you really don't understand, and I didn't understand when I started the Highlander as an actor, what directors really do. They have to understand what the background is, what the story arc is, how the characters work, what the actors are doing, what the props are doing, what the stage is doing, what the lighting is doing. They have to understand all of that. And to do that correctly it's an art. So to do it well, when you watch a TV show or a film, it's an hour and a half. They reckon it takes 1 million man-hours to do one of the major 1 million man-hours. And you watch it in an hour and a half and go, that wasn't too good. So there's a lot of people who put a lot of work into it. So I like directing, but I do love to be an actor as well. It's my gut. So they're different. Next. I think they've got the mics over there. If you want to go grab one, they can go over there and grab the mic. There's one in the back there too. You what? You can scream out, so can I. Hi.
Hi. I watched the Hallmark movie, The Confession, because you were in it. And how was it like playing a not-so-nice character?
He wasn't not so nice, it's just misunderstood. I love that. I mean, it's always good. I mean, when I played Bad Duncan, it was fun. Much more fun to go and do that type of thing. The interesting thing is with characters, when you actually play them, no character plays bad. Hitler wasn't bad, not in his own mind. He was doing what he thought he was doing. We actually evaluate what is bad in our own way that we evaluate life and our good and bad. So him as a character, he wasn't bad. He was just, he had a drinking problem, and he, to pay the debt and the drinking problem, he basically sold the estate off. So but it's fun to do.
Do you have any new projects we should be looking for?
I have one that's going to be done by November, what I just heard, called Black Rose, with Robert Darby and Christiana Loken. We shot that's a film in Russia about a serial killer that's stalking girls in Los Angeles. And I did AE, which was Apocalypse Earth earlier this year. But what else have I got? Those are the two at the moment. And then, who knows if they hire me for something else.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How you doing? I was hoping you might be able to comment on a little bit more what you were talking about when at the end of season 5 you had taken Stan Kirsch's head, and it was a very poignant moment, and you walked off the set, off the screen. That was the end of the season, and it felt like it could have been a very good culmination of the series. And I think that was going to be the end, but then the fans helped bring it back for another short season. You weren't in a bunch of the episodes, and it sort of felt packed together. And I was wondering how that experience of that last season affected you, and was it what you had hoped for the end of the series?
Well, the interesting thing was the reason why that series felt not as congealed together as the other ones had was because they were looking for the spin-off. They were looking for the next Amanda, who they found in the series, but they brought in 5 other girls to test them in different shows that had really nothing to do with the entire arc that Duncan MacLeod had gone through, and that's part of the reason that happened. The show at the end was the very last episode. I was telling people this in Louisville and in Tampa, over the past couple of months. The very end of Highlander, the series, was going to be me, Jim Burns, Peter Wingfield, possibly, I think, Elizabeth Grayson, standing, looking at the camera going, cheers and thanks for 5 years. I went, you can't do that, you nuts. You've just taken away the myth of what you built up for 5 years. And this is one of the issues I always had with some of the films as well, the producers went off into this, let's try and see how much money we can make in special effects, etc. But that's not what this show is about. It's not what Highlander's about. And that's a mistake to be made. So the last season, for me, had a few good episodes in it, but it wasn't congealed together as much because of that overriding reason. Don't worry, I had the same problem a minute ago.
I really just wanted to thank you. When you did the episode of Modern Prometheus, I grew up reading, but I basically stopped at this point, and I never really read poetry. But after watching the episode, I went out and I bought a couple of Byron books and read it, and now I read every day. And my 14-year-old daughter, she reads every day. So I just want to say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. You know, that was a great. That was a great episode for me because I actually found, as a director, and talking about directing, changing certain things, a lot of the things that were in that show weren't necessarily in the poetry of Modern Prometheus. When they wrote the thing, it was me chasing this bad guy who was disguising himself throughout the centuries as modern Byron. And I said, we have to use some of Byron's poetry in it. So I went out and I read Byron's poetry, and I found in the very last, if you look at the very last fight, he's saying, he's actually, what was the lines? The lines were into the I can't remember the lines, but the line, we actually took Byron's poetry and I gave it to him to actually say to me while we were doing the sword fight. And it really kind of, I think, made it work because he's Byron, he's supposed to be saying this poetry. So I think, I'm so happy that you're actually able to go back and read because I think reading is one of the things I talk about on my radio show each week. I have a radio show each week that we do, Peace Fund Radio. And one of the things was reading that we discuss about how important it is for our kids and for everybody to learn to read because it has such a knock-on effect on so many other things, on education, on being able to get out of certain instances where people get into trouble. So I think it's very important, and I applaud you for putting your kids through that sort of thing. Well, those of you that are coming on today, I have little cards. I'll have all my cards on my Twitter and my Peace Fund. My Peace Fund is LA Talk Radio / the Peace Fund. And you will hear each week. But on my, where I'm signing today, there are free cards that have all the Twitter, the Facebook, the Peace Fund, the blah. The communication stuff, yes. Social media, which we never had back in the 90s.
First, I just want to say that I'm extremely grateful you weren't named Dougal MacLeod because my boys are Connor and Duncan.
Yeah, we're going to work with Connor and Dougal.
And in case you were wondering, Duncan will be the last one standing. But do you still get to practice your sword fighting and all those skills, or are you teaching your kids any of that?
I will be. My daughter's very, very... she's a sweetheart in the sense that she's very a gentle soul. And sometimes, you know, like my wife was telling me the other day, you know, in her school that she goes to, she's seen the way they teach them is when you're playing with something, you're allowed to own this. The minute you walk away from it, it's open again. So this little boy's playing with this thing, and he leaves it and goes off. And my daughter comes back and goes, oh, you know, so she starts playing. And suddenly the little boy turns back and goes, hey, that's mine! And she goes, oh, okay, fine, no, leave it on. And I want her to go, hey, excuse me, you just let her, you know, I want her to. But the teacher then brought her back up and said, no, it's okay, you have to share, and now you walked away from it and understand. Angelisa, you want to pick it up? She said, my daughter picked it up and went, yeah. Starts playing with it, still not sure whether this boy was going to like bite her on the back. And she's playing with it, and the minute teacher left, she went, forget that, I'm not playing that. But I want to teach her the ability to be able to stand up for herself. And it doesn't mean being aggressive or anything, but just to say, no, that's enough. Because I think we all have to understand that. And we all have to say no at some point. And it's not bad to do that. It's not aggressive or anything. So yes, I would like to teach them that for their own identity, in a sense. Strength. Well, I mean, it's...
One of my friends. When you started Highlander, you had any idea that it was going to go on so long, so popular? Because I still remember I used to get called, I had a sword, I had a jacket, I had a shirt. Merchandising was crazy during the time where merchandising was not prevalent in the time period. My second question is, the last movie, do you have any input on that? What that was right in there?
Okay, let's address
it.
One.
Coat off, like that.
With the, you know, the merchandise. I mean, I always believed Highlander was a product that was primed for all that type of stuff. I actually started the merchandise, all the hair ties and the belt buckles and all that type of stuff, with my design. And the Highlander people went, oh, that looks cool, can we use it? And so, in the very first conventions we used to have, back in the 90-something, we set up booths, and we had all the merchandise, and I had my merchandise out. And I remember Bill Panzer walking past and seeing it, we buying this merchandise, and they went, oh, yeah, maybe this is a good idea. And the next time they had the Highlander store, which had, like so much more, and they had the rights. I don't have the rights to it because it's Highlander merchandise. So that started that. I mean, I agree. And today, if it was today, it would be an entirely different thing. Except I know that they have a lot of call centers saying, "Have you seen the new Duncan MacLeod pin? It's a special edition, and Adrian wore it in season 3." I mean, they do white lies to try and get you to buy things. So I think there's. The other question was the last movie. Did I have any input? Now, the problem I found with the last movie, The Source, I had input into it, and I'll tell you what happened to it. When I first heard that we were doing The Source, I thought, it's great. It's time for us to be able to really set the record straight. After Endgame wasn't a bad movie, and I thought, okay, we can do a really good movie here. I had David Abramowitz, who was the writer of the series, call me up and say, hey, I wrote the script, it's really good. And listen, here's a couple of scenes for us. So he read me the scenes on the telephone. And I said, actually, that's really kind of cool. So I waited for the script. The script finally came in, and it was nothing to do with this. It was an entirely different script. They'd taken this script and thrown it out and gave me another one. And I looked at it and went, this doesn't work. It really doesn't work. So for the next 4 months, 5 months, I sat there trying to work with them to try and fix it. In the meantime, we started shooting. We'd only done 3/4 of the script. So if you look at the art was fine, and then it went nowhere. Because they really didn't know where they were going with it. So that's the input I had, but I would have had a totally different type of input to it, and it was unfortunate as well, because Bill Panzer at the time had fallen and broken he'd had a very serious accident. I was the only producer on set. And it's really hard when you're the producer, as the actor on set, to tell the director, no, you can't do that. Because then he thinks I'm doing it from an actor standpoint, not the producer standpoint. So it became a little bit problematic.
Hi, first off, welcome to DragonCon. I hope you have fun, and I hope you come back. I've been waiting for 5 years to be here. I got suckered into the pin thing.
You got what?
I got suckered into the pin.
You got a pin? I got a couple of free ones somewhere in my log.
MacLeod was 500 years old and went through all sorts of periods in time, changes and all that. If you could travel back in time, what would be the time period that you would go to? And what is the strangest, oddest, wondrous thing that a fan has done when they met you?
I've got a lot of those stories. The time frame, the interesting thing is about when we look at a time that's in the past, it's our romantic version of what it was. I mean, to me, the Highlands of Scotland were, Duncan's history, who he was. So to me, I was a really big fan of that era, but there's a lot of things we never had. Central heating, running water, toilet facilities. There's certain things that, you get ill and die just because you got like a cold. So the reality of what would be my favourite period is different than what my romantic vision of what it was would be. So Duncan's, who he was really my favourite to go back and do. I always found it also fun when he was in the French era, when he had the little mustache thing, that cavalier. You know, because to me, it's a guy, all of you go through your lives and you have different eras in your lives and different ways that you are. You're more energetic, you're more passionate, you're more angry, you're whatever it is. Well, I think this guy had 400 years of doing that, so his character had to have changed slightly as he went through it. And we really lined out throughout the series, every time Duncan went into something, how he was, what he dressed like, because 3 years down the road, we might go back to that same time period and have to do another, and then it'd be all you guys going, wait a minute. It wasn't the same then, it wasn't the same outfit, it wasn't wearing the same shoes. So I said to the beginning, we've got to do this. And so that period was really favourite for me. And the second question was, see, I forget questions after I've babbled on. Is what? Oh, biggest fan? Oh, well. I'll tell you something funny that happened to me in Paris one time. Apart from the fact of being mobbed in the Vatican and it being thrown out. But there was one guy that was, I always used to have this, it was very funny because I'd walk down the street and I was very recognisable in France. France was huge for Highlander, it was a very big show. And I'd walk down the street with hand glasses or whatever, you know, and I'd walk down the Champs-Elysees, I was walking down the Champs-Elysees and I'd watch people, if I'm walking along like this, I could see people out the corner of my eye walking past going, just trying to figure out whether it was me or not. And then they stop and they go. So this one time this happened to me, you know, while I was walking down the Champs-Elysees, these two guys did it. I'm like, oh whatever, I saw them go past. And I walked down to the end of the street. And this is on the Champs-Elysees, one of the busiest streets in Paris, right? And I walk down the end of the street, and I get to the crosswalk, and I look to my right, and one of them's on the floor, like this. And the other one's on the head goes, yeah! I went, who? So that was one of them. There were others, but that's one.
Yo.
Where?
Marco! I just want to know, is it intentional or had it always been intentional for Highlander to have a Thunderbird as the car?
And you know, the funny thing about the Thunderbird, I mean, I love the car, it kept breaking down though.
Did it have anything to do with the quickening?
No.
It just has nothing to do with thunder or just a coincidence. It was a Thunderbird.
I have no idea about that because Bill Panzer had a very specific reason for doing certain things. Like every single bad guy in Highlander, if you look at it, had a K to start his name. Yeah. Right? I have no idea in his world whether the Thunderbird had anything to do with the lightning and thunder. I don't know, but
it was an argument my wife and I had.
Was it?
You would have been a great James Bond, by the way.
Bill? No, he's not answering.
Alright, okay. So first off, I think I blame you entirely for the fact that my husband is obsessed with Peugeots and the tiny French cars. It's cool, you know.
Have you ever been in one of those? You obviously have, right?
I have, yeah.
And this is what it feels like when you go around a corner.
A little bit. Yeah.
I mean, the early suspensions on those cars, literally, when we were in it, I was like, oh my god, it's going to roll over. But it's not so soft. It would literally feel like you were... Anyway, sorry. Reminiscing.
My question is, I've been following your career for a while. It seems like you do a lot of fantasy stuff, so the Highlander and Dark Shadows and Creed, and there's all this kind of these things. And so I was wondering if that was, is that something that you look for when you look for work, or did it just kind of happen, like you happened to do that?
No, it just happened. I mean, you know, I started as an actor, not a martial artist. It just so happened those were the roles that I got put into. You know, my very first was as a ballet dancer in the Colbys. I played a Russian. I was an English I was an English Italian playing a Russian in an American TV series. It was always weird, but you know, so things came to you. And same thing happens. You pick some things to pay the rent. You know, you do some things for art. So and what you get paid and what you want out of that piece is dependent on what the piece is. So those are the things that came to me.
Is there a genre you prefer if you choose?
No, not really. I mean, you know, I love drama, I love action thrillers. I like the action thing, but you know, I like something that's content, something that allows you to do as an actor rather than just mindlessly go ahead and just do this thing, you know. I mean, but TV today, I mean, I want to go back and do more TV today because TV is written today probably better than some films are. So, you know.
Hi, Adrian.
Hi.
I really loved watching you play against Mythos, Darius, and of course Fitzgern. I was wondering who was your favorite character to play opposite of?
Well, it was different. All three of those are very different. You know, Roger Daltrey is just a big laugh. Roger was just so much fun. We had such a laugh. You know, sometimes I remember we were doing one where we were back in like the 18th century. There was this cow here, right? And I think we had it on the bloopers where we would start dialogue and the cow goes, "Moo! So, what do you think? Moo! What do you think?" And we just burst out, and you couldn't do the take for about an hour because of this damn cow that was supposed to be in the shot. So that was always fun to do. With Mythos, with Peter Wingfield, we had a very different dynamic, and it was much more. It was fun, but it was a little bit more serious. It was, you know, there's a whole different dynamic. And then with Darius was what Mythos' character became. Because Darius died in real life, Werner Stocker died in real life, they replaced him with the Mythos character. And the funny thing was, Peter says that when he talks, he says, you know, I came on doing this show, I hadn't heard of Highlander. I walk on the set, the guy's talking to me about sword work, and I've got to do this. He's like, so what? You know, what is? And he became this character that became so loved by so many people because of who he was. He was this, yeah, well, I'm going to run life like this, but I'm, you know, 3,000 years old or whatever. You know, so there's something really endearing about that, and people really took to it. So it was different. It was a different relationship.
Yeah, I was just curious, with, I said, just discussing Roger Daltrey, there seemed to be a lot of pop and rock stars that played villains and other characters. I was wondering if there was any ones that you wished would end up on the set one day, and who were your favorites to work with?
Well, Roger was, I think, one of the biggest ones, because I used to see The Who when I was a kid, you know, being from England. Obviously, there was Joan Jett that came on, who had her things to do, and then there was, I was just about to say Fine Young Cannibals. I was going to sing it, but see, you saved the people. Roland Gift, yeah, thank you. He was great. Roland was great. He came back several times, and he was fun to work with too, because he was just like, yeah, you know, I'm going to do this. And I find that with a lot of people that have done a lot of work, their attitude is not that they don't care, but they're a little bit easier. They're not so intense. I need to get this right. I need to make sure that, you know, but they do the things and they're a little easier to work with, because these guys have been around hundreds of thousands of people, you know, so their ability to walk on to do something like Highlander, which was well known, but it was also well structured, was easier for them to take on. And those were the people I think I can remember the best. I don't know how many other rock stars we had. Anybody else got any other names? Sheena Easton. Oh gosh, Sheena, yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. Sheena was fabulous. She actually was in her video. And my co-host keeps telling me about that. Oh, Sheena Easton video. You were in a Sheena Easton video, were you? I'm like, yes, I was in a Sheena Easton. And then he'll tell me about the Duran Duran video that I was in years ago playing a Matador. And I'm like, dude. If you ever listen to the show, he may bring it up. And I'll be like, dude. But Sheena was great to work with too, you know. So it was fun. I didn't have any say in who came on, but it's always good to have known faces.
Did you, like I said, ever have one in the back of your mind then? Davy Jones, anybody?
No. No, I didn't really. I mean, the one person, I mean, if you want to call a rock star, who I call him a rock star, was a gentleman who you all know, and I'll tell you about him in a minute, who I saw in Vancouver doing a set one night. And I got Bill Panzer and I said, look at this guy, we've got to have him, we've got to have this guy on the show. And he said, we can't, we don't have music like this, there's no way to put him in. I said, but look, listen to his music, it's amazing, you've got to listen to it. The next year we had Joe Dawson on the show as the Watchman. And Jim Burns, fantastic musician, so to me Jim's a rock star.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Adrian, thank you for coming to Atlanta. As Duncan MacLeod, excluding yourself, who's your favorite immortal and why?
they're all dead. I mean, most of them anyway, but they can't come back, as you can probably tell by watching the series and the film. I mean, you know, my favourite immortal, gosh. I mean, obviously Amanda to me was one of my favourites because she always got me in trouble. You know, what guy doesn't like that? You know, so she was fun to play. As a favourite immortal, I think as a bad guy, Callus was one of the most vicious in a sense of what he did. I'm trying to think of other ones that we had throughout the many, many years. I mean, Slam Quince from the very first one was big, and Christopher Lambert said to me, he said, I don't trust him with a sword. No, actually, sorry, he said, I don't trust him with a sword. He was, because, you know, he'd been cut a few times, and that happened to me a lot during the series, either whether it was from the adrenaline that happens once you choreograph something and you start playing the scene, or it's whether because you just don't know technically what you should be doing. But with a guy that has a sword that's about this high, that is this tall, and he's swinging it like this, there are moments where it can break. So that's why. But he was kind of interesting, intense. I've never seen anybody in my life that had two lines that came from here to here, etched into their forehead. I can't even do it. But he was interesting. I remember him. The other guy, I think that was, oh gosh, there's so many. I mean, I'm flickering through my mind now the different ones that we had. I mean, obviously, the other one that I thought was really interesting because, you know, I directed was Byron. That was a really interesting character as an immortal. You know, it was to place that guy out of history as being one of the immortal characters was to me an interesting choice. So I'd say he was an interesting. I think I killed all of them off. You know, I mean, they're all like, as I said, dead. Good.
So you enjoying your first DragonCon?
I'm talking a lot. And I'm sure I'll talk a little bit more too at some point. But,
Tomorrow I'm sure there'll be a lot of Duncan MacLeods.
Yeah, do you know how weird that is? Like, if you think about it, like, hi, my ponytail, my jacket, and everything. I'm like, yeah, you do. But it's really, it's great to have Spawn, you know, Spawn. It's great to have Inspired, thank you very much. Think of breeding. To inspire people to get into that, to actually love that. But it is also strange to have people come up dressed as you. Because, like, oh, it's me.
Okay, so my question beyond that is, if you were to write and wrap up Duncan MacLeod's story, how would you have ended it?
Well, actually, you know, the thing is, I always believe that he is a character that would have to disappear. Which he kind of did in the very last scene, which they did the montage but there would have to be some reason why you would not see him for the next 100 years or the next 50 years or whatever. He would go, and we kind of did that. You know, I mean, if you look at when the very first series, Duncan had done that for a while. When Connor said it, you've been away for 100 years, you've been in the woods, you've been doing this, because that's who Duncan was. Duncan realised there's a lot of things, and that's what I really enjoyed about playing with him, or playing him, was the fact that he was constantly changing, but he also had a moral centre that said, look, this fighting stuff, I don't want to do it. I don't want to take my friend's head. I don't want. And how do I get away from that? There was no getting away from it. But for a certain period of time, he said, I will try and live this type of life. So that's where I would have said he would have gone off. We kind of did that at the end. He said, no more. I'm not going to do this anymore. At the very end, we said something because of what had happened in that very last. He said, I've had enough of getting my friends involved, getting them in danger. That's what it was. Richie died. Tessa died because of him. So that's where I would have taken him. We kind of did, but it wasn't really said.
Okay. How do you feel about the new ways people consume media, such as Netflix and Amazon? And how does it give you the opportunity? How does it give the opportunity to bring shows like Highlander back to a new generation of people who weren't around in the 90s? And how do you feel that that changes the environment of entertainment? And do you feel Highlander? I thought about this for a while.
Hold on a second. You see, I have difficulty remembering two.
Basically, how does Netflix and Amazon...
Okay, let's start with that one.
Okay. How does Netflix and Amazon change the whole spectrum of entertainment? Because I know Highlander is on Netflix right now. And so, like, people today, they could watch all the seasons over the weekend like that. But back in the 90s, I had to be in front of my TV at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. Oh, I've seen this one before, crap. But with Netflix, you can watch everything in a row.
No,
I think that changes things.
I think it's great to have new people, because I do have new fans, which is really odd after so long. I think it's great to have that media. It's not going to be the only media that's going to be out there. Things are changing rapidly. I actually just saw something I'm probably going to be trying using as a platform to distribute some of the things we're doing, which is literally having any TV show, first of all, live on any mobile platform that you have. That's coming in the next 6 months to a year. You can watch American Idol on your phone while it's going live. You couldn't do that before. You'd have to wait and do the DVR. DVR is going to be gone in another 5 years. So these platforms are changing, and I think it does allow a lot more people. Imagine this, and this platform is not just, you know, when you go to Hulu, or Hulu, right? You can't get it anywhere else because it's proprietary, because it's cable tied. In other words, each of the cable networks has a physical cable. Now they don't. There's new technology coming out that allows things to be shown all over the world. Millions and hundreds of millions of people will be able to see a TV show, which is great for producers, because it changes their dynamic of how they produce shows and where they go to get it done. So it allows a lot more people. So it's great for us actors as well. We're seen in more places, and the more places we're seen, we're a product, the more value we are.
Since you're a producer, do you think you'd ever go to a Netflix or Amazon? Like, there have been a lot of shows recently that have gone to Netflix, and they say, the hell with the networks and stuff, we're going to go right to the people. Do you think that's a better way to do business?
I think it's an interesting way to do it, yeah. I think it can be. Depends on what you have.
That was all, thank you.
Okay. See, 4 went down to 1. It can be only, right, I know, yeah.
My question is, the first season after Darius died, it was kind of tragic and everything. How was the Watchers supposed to originally be brought in? Or were they?
They weren't. That's the interesting thing. That's what happens when you develop a show. When you've got the writers sitting in their room in between seasons or during their off time, and they go, we need to bring something else. What do? We realized there was a missing element of the human knowledge. I mean, people are like, well, these guys have been around for hundreds of years. Somebody must know about it. And they went, yeah, we have an organization that's been watching. So it developed from that. So I don't think it was there at the beginning of season 1. We had David Abramowitz come in, and him and his team basically developed ideas such as the Watchers that were put into the series.
Okay, this is the last question.
It's alright, I've got a couple more of these to do the next couple of days. Hold on, there's no mic on that. Go. No, that's me, sorry. Gotcha. Still doing this, I mean. No, that's me. Okay, we have a mic problem. Why don't you just shout it out? Oh, there it is.
It's there, it is there. Less sweeping question. I wondered about the guest stars in the various episodes. Did people ever have to audition their fencing skills? I noticed that people who could really fence, you got lots of nice long shots so you could see the fight. And then there were other people that you only saw to check off swords that I deduced they couldn't fence at all.
I wish they actually had been, because it's tough. And the interesting thing is, every single guest star wanted to do his own fight, or her own fight. Because I believe we're not far away from that. We're 100 years from actually using those as weapons. We used to use it, so it's in our DNA to be able to do this stuff. And so I think there's a historical thing of, oh yes, my ancestors used to do it, I can do it. So every guest star that came in would do it. But it wouldn't mean, and they'd have a week to choreograph the fight, and then it's a lot of technical stuff that has to happen. So I wish we had more time to do stuff like that. And yes, there were some people that were much better at it. Anthony DeLongis came in, who was a sword choreographer as well. He came in, and we did the Spadi Daga, the circle, the two spot in the circle in the ring. And that was very hard to do, because when you're dealing with one weapon, it's hard enough, but then you have to do technically two weapons in a totally different style that it was. So it was great that he was able to do that, but other people didn't have the time, because how many times are you actually sword fighting? You're not doing sword fights every day, are you? You're not in fencing clubs. As actors, you've got other times. So we would have people do it, and majority of the time, I would say probably 95%, 98%, they would be doing it. We would have very small amount of people that would be the stunt guy. So unless it was something that was very, it would need a little bit more oomph to it, we would bring in the stunt guy. But in reality, most of the time it was that, and that's probably the reason why you're saying this worked, because it was either flowing, or because the choreography or the location was restricted, is why you saw tighter shots rather than the longer ones. And the other one, last thing about that, is that in the very first season we used sparking swords. You ever tried doing a sword fight with a wire stuffed down your trousers? So that was also, we're going to get the spark in it. Today it's called special effects. So that was really, there were instances, and yeah, I did get cut a few times, but that's the next Q&A. We'll talk about those stuff. I think my time is up. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. I'll see some of you soon.